On Friday of Worlds, I ran into this gentleman right here. That's right, none other than the Fluke and Box. He asked me what I was playing in the culling, and I told him Dorinthea, and I could see that little spark in his eyes. So for the next 20 or so minutes, the two of us had a great discussion around his take on include strategy, fighting, and beating Icelander, and so on. So now that we're back from Worlds Weekend, I wanted to circle back, and today we are chatting Dorinthea. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hello there, Flesh and Blood folks, and welcome to the Dice Commando YouTube channel, and go again, a fabulous video cast about all things Flesh and Blood. Today we have the privilege of being joined by the Fluke and the Box. How's it going, my friend?
Fantastic, man. Good to see you again.
Yes, absolutely. It was great to meet up with you at the Worlds, or for those of us who are in the World event. So, how are you? How are you doing?
Good, man. Looking forward to some CC. I haven't played Dorinthea CC in person yet with the new cards, so I'm excited.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to talk about the new cards for sure. So, as we go through today's video, I'd like to hear from you guys out there. Let us know in the comments what you guys think, not only about his choices, but takes and your advice to us playing Dorinthea as well. So, and remember, as we're trying to round out our Dynasty collections and build those decks, because not everybody opens as many packs as this gentleman right here, right? But Travis over at Fab Foundry is a great, reliable source of fresh from pack singles. He's a good guy and an LGS owner, so please consider checking him out. Using the link below, I get a small kickback from that, and he's a good guy. So, all right, well, hey man, Dorinthea, that's what we're talking about today. So, what's your, for those who may not know you, kind of give us a little bit of your history in Flesh and Blood. I know you started off as a collector, but kind of got drugged kicking and screaming into the game, right? In terms of playing it. So, give us your history.
So, I think it was July last year, so over a year. Bought a Crew First Edition box after watching Rudy's channel. Pulled a Shiana cold foil, realized it's worth more than the box, and started buying more. The game obviously looked interesting, but it was COVID, so I never got a chance to leave. My girlfriend at the time, to go out and play in person. My girlfriend at the time and I played a little with the Monarch precons, and when COVID eased up, I was subscribed to Tall Timmy's YouTube channel, which was he was playing in stores local to me, and I figured, hey, let me join this guy, this crazy tall man. So I had him over, did a video with him, opening some Crew First Edition, and then we went to an armory, and I won my first game because the Dash decked himself out in Blitz, and that was it. That was the start. But I definitely play more than I collect these days.
Nice. Yeah, so why don't you let people know where they can, we say you're the Fluke in the Box, but what does that mean to people, right? What's your shtick?
Well, I mean, my YouTube channel is just me opening boxes. I guess you could call it commentary on the game and the community. I really just try and have fun, but if I see something I disagree with, I'll usually talk about it. Or agree with it, I'll usually talk about it. I'm trying to get more into player content. I did release a deck tech video with me and a friend, Philip, for Dorinthea. It's like 45 minutes long. It's probably worth watching after this video if you want to see what we came up with as a list. Dorinthea's definitely can be built in more than one way, which is we're going to discuss for sure. But other than that, I do a podcast with the Tall Timmy called Thunder, Flesh and Blood Down Under. That's going very well. Having a lot of fun. But our goal and my goal is just to grow the community. That helps me as an investor. It helps my YouTube channel. But I think the game deserves a lot more players and attention than it's got. So I try and do everything in that spirit to grow the game.
All right, fair enough. Well, So we just had Dynasty release 2 weeks ago-ish, and we got a couple of new cards. Well, we got more than a couple, but we got a couple of usable new cards, I think. So where do you think those cards fit into her as a whole? And then how do you think that then fits into the meta as a whole?
So I'm going to start with Pierce, the mechanic that came out in Dynasty. It's a tricky one, right? Because I don't know yet if that makes us be able to beat Oldhim with a Dawnblade plan. Like, if it's just easier now to put a Pierce card up against Oldhim when he blocks with Rampart and just be able to hit with that. Because a lot of times against Oldhim, to clarify for newer people on Dory, it's hard to hit the first time because they'll use Crown, they'll use Rampart. So all they got to do is pitch like one card, and they'll usually stop the 3 damage quite efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
Plus they have the D-reacts, Ice and Earth, so they can actually stop 4 damage without actually spending any cards. So they can sink 1 damage, Rampart 1 damage, and then they can also usually Earth react on top of that, and that's 4, which is very hard to already get over 4. This is without them blocking from hand. So Pierce means every time they block with Rampart, we might be able to hit. But aside from that, Puncture, the attack reaction, is just an immediate no-brainer replacement for Thrust and Razor Reflex, which I've been running, which are 1 cost, 3 damage pump breads that block for 2. Now we got a 1 cost, 3 damage pump that blocks for 3.
Mm-hmm.
So it just went straight in the deck. There was no debate. But because we got some other tools, you would have probably removed Razor and Thrust anyway. Namely Ironsong Pride. It's an instant aura that costs 1, that buffs for 1, but it actually gives your sword a counter. And now we actually have to build Dorinthea, I think, a little different than we used to, with a little bit less reactions that are for 3, and maybe add ones that are bigger, because the counters are just that much easier to get now. I mean, Ironsong Pride gives you a counter pretty much for free. You just have to pay 1 and hit at some point to keep it. So that's what Philip and I talked about, but those 2 cards, what I'm trying to say is those 2 cards 100% go in the deck in their red form. Well, Ironsong Prize only red. Puncture. It's just a better Razor Reflex. It's 1 for 4 if they block with armor. It's 1 for 3 that blocks for 3. If you use it with Singing Steelblade, so if they block with armor and hand, you can go Singing Steelblade for it, and it's going to give you a 5 pump,
mm-hmm.
which is for 1, like for 2 cost, 5. That's we have a lot of what's the word for it? Flexibility now. With like we have that now. Blocking with armor can be wrong, is what I'm trying to say. Like when someone blocks you with just armor, they might have made a mistake. That's sort of never used. We didn't have that tool before.
Mm-hmm.
But the other card, well, there's 2 other cards actually. There's the Aura Blessing of, I can't remember. I don't believe that's very playable in Dorinthea Dawnblade. I'm sure you could.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
I think you can build around it. I think it might see some play in the Emperor, because he's got only red cards. He can put one of those out for next turn and have a much bigger attack. Because Emperor, I think, is more of a setup deck from what I can see. But I don't see it running. Look. Dorinthea's job is to hit her Dawnblade. That blessing says hit the Dawnblade next turn, which is useless because we will lose our counter if we don't hit this turn. So I don't feel like I'm going to play it. But to be honest, the better Dorinthea players in Australia, specifically Luke Fletcher, you can go look at the World XP leaderboard. He's top 5, top 10. He does play a setup Dorinthea. He does go to his second cycle to kill you. He doesn't play super aggressive. I believe someone like that with a good photographic memory and being able to count his pitch stack might see a lot of use for getting a couple of blessings out at the opportune moment, play a shunt, and then go off and have a free +6. Like, think about it, if you have a blessing or 2, you've got an extra card the next turn, right? So that's a great thing to have in Dorinthea, but you really have to set that up. I personally don't play like that. The people that play set up second cycle Dorinthea probably will see value. But the last card is Precision Press. One cost, non-attack action that says give the sword go again. If it's blocked by armor, it has piercing 3, 2, or 1, depending on the color pitch. This one is interesting. I don't see myself playing the red unless I'm trying to beat an Oldhim meta, and that's an insane card against Oldhim. But we already beat Oldhim in another way, which we're going to talk about, so I don't see the red in the deck, but it makes a great blue. It's a very good blue because it's a 1 go again, and then if you already have counters, that's fine. Also, it does have that passive +1 if they block with armor, which basically says they can't block with armor. That has 1 block. That's pretty much what it's saying. Which is also it's a double-edged sword. We want them to block with armor to remove the armor for next turn. So you're sort of delaying the inevitable armor block for when you don't have piercing. But overall, puncture is amazing in red. I don't think I'd run the blues. Ironsong Pride is a must, although there's an argument to maybe have 2, not 3, but that's something we could discuss. And then Precision Press Blue is great, and the Blessing is minute. I wouldn't play it. Mind you, we're skipping over 2 things, the weapons, very quickly, but if you want to delve in, we can. The Axe is terrible. Jubil is amazing. I haven't tested Jubil, but I think it makes our Wizard matchup more bearable because you can run AB3, for instance, but the sword's giving you AB4, or run AB2, and the sword, if you make it hit every turn, which is not impossible into Wizard. And we talked about the Icelander matchup where we don't try and hit twice, we try and hit once and pump it. Swing. The Jubil just makes way more sense to play that way because all you want to do is make sure you hit. And Jubil is a direct counter to the new Wizard mechanic that says Surge. Surge says 4 damage. If you deal 5 or more, you get a bonus. Well, Jubil's saying that +1 is negated. So it's kind of... Remember, you don't have to pitch into that token, so you get AB1 every turn for free. It's like gaining a resource into Wizard every turn or gaining a life. So I think Jubil's very strong. I'm yet to test it, but on paper it looks kind of good.
Yep. So that's... that was we definitely wanted to talk about Icelander because that's what you gave me a lot of good tips in San Jose about Icelander. So, I mean, we got a lot of things to go hit on, but I think you kind of ripped off the Band-Aid on that one, right? So let's go ahead and jump into the Icelander match. I definitely want to put a pin in Ironsong Pride. I think there's a good conversation around that.
Yes.
But let's go ahead into your approach on Icelander.
So I do feel confident into Icelander. It's not the most fun matchup in the world. Hypothermia was our worst enemy because they could play that in response to our refraction bolters, which made that it's terrible when that happens. That's gone. So Icelander, and this is something I learnt from the card guys, Josh Lau. I believe he was playing a 6v6 tournament that they streamed or recorded. And it was very early days for Icelander CC, and he beat the Icelander, or he came close anyway. I think he lost, but I remember him saying that the strategy in the sideboard is you're more than likely, I don't know what the percentage is, but let's say 60% of the time Icelander's going to give you a Frostbite, which, not just a Frostbite, it's usually a Frostbite plus Arcane damage as well. We don't have the resources in Warrior to pitch for a sword swing that costs 2. And it just doesn't work to swing twice when the first one costs 2. You're going to need 5 resources to have a turn, which we very rarely have. And you're not going to go throw in an extra 10 blues and play the Guardian style of pitch double blue into it, right? But what you do need to do, or what Josh was saying, is if you play an unattack action into Icelander, they will usually respond to that because it's face up, they know. A very good Icelander will sometimes ignore it to wait for you to commit more resources because then they'll be able to deal more damage. But in essence, even if you're holding an unattack action like Supremacy or something, there's a lot of sense in just swinging the Dawnblade and potentially pitching the Supremacy into AB. Because what you're trying to believe, what I think you try and do against Icelander, what works for me is you need to see the Channel Lakes come and go. Like, the problem is you can go Break Courage, Steelblade Supremacy, Determination. You're like, all right, here we go, Dead Icelander, and then they go Channel Lake, and you physically can't pitch through a Channel Lake turn as a warrior. Like, you pretty much will only swing twice. So if you're only going to be swinging twice a lot of the time, why not just start by swinging twice, which puts damage on the stack and forces the Icelander to respond to damage, and you will usually outchip them. That's kind of where I'm going with this. Warrior, if the Icelander bricks, let's say they put a red Emeritus Scolding in Arsenal, which is a great card to have there, but it's not something they can play on your turn easily. You still usually can pitch into an attack reaction. The 3 becomes 6, the 6 becomes 9. You might even get a counter once or twice during the game. But they just are so good at not letting us swing twice that you should just accept the fact that you're swinging once and play like that. Now, you draw 3 blues. Now, you know what I mean? Like, if you draw 3 blues and you've got Courage up, and one of the blues is a glistening. Well, maybe you swing, let the Frostbite come, they block from hand, you glint, hopefully pull a red attack reaction, and then you have the full turn. But, like, let's give an example. Into Fi, we swing twice nearly every turn, because he's terrible at blocking us. Into Icelander, I think you swing twice, maybe 20% of the time. So you need to remember that before you commit your non-attack action. That's pretty much the plan. But it's still a terrible matchup. Yeah. But you have to have a plan.
So I mean, one of the things,
just go in.
One of the things you had told me at Worlds was that you actually cited out your glistening. So that's the yellow, right? But your glistening steel blades, you actually cited those out against Icelander. I believe that's what you had said. Is that still accurate?
I think glistening, I side out. No, I wouldn't. I side them out against Oldhim. Twinning, glistening, spoils war. I side out all the go again against Icelander. I don't think you side them. Against Oldhim, you side them out. Into Icelander, you keep it in hand. You pitch it. So it's just a yellow. The reason we don't side it out is most of our sideboard is red. You want the yellows into Icelander.
I see.
But I'm not trying to play a glistening turn into Icelander unless I've literally seen 2 or 3 Channel Lakes already. Unless their arsenal's empty, like like when they have their big turn, and their big turn is usually what the card that says, is it Endless Winter? No, that's a different card. It's the one that has XX on the cost, and they pitch all their blues into it and pop Striders and right.
Yeah, Ice Eternal. Yeah,
Ice Eternal. Yeah. Because they end up with no arsenal at the end of their turn. Next turn or after that point, they usually give you tempo. I've realized Icelander, the way it plays, at some point Icelander will give you tempo. They'll freeze you up, give you 1,000,000 Frostbites, deal 18 Arcane. But if you've kept your life total high and you're not dead, so if Storm Striders are gone, that's a window to start spending more resources. And then if Channel Lakes, you've seen a couple of them, or they have an empty arsenal, then you're good to go. Mm-hmm. Mind you, I never played into like the Michael Hamilton type list. I don't think we beat that. That's like way too efficient. But also, getting hit with 7, physical damage is way better for us than a single Frostbite because our Dawnblade is likely to get bigger in that matchup. I just haven't played into it. I haven't had a chance to play into like the hybrid Icelander.
Yeah, it's very hard. It's very hard.
Well, I think into that matchup you go very aggressive because you're sort of hoping that they'll probably Arsenal a blue ice card, but you're hoping that they to get rid of those cards to force them to block with them. If it's not pure Arcane, we can deal with physical damage a lot better than pure Arcane. Even 7s, it sucks to block 7s, I know, but we can deal with that better than 5 Arcane with 2 Frostbites is way worse for us.
Yeah, and it lets you thin out your reds a little bit, which doesn't suck.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Oldhim, which is just an awful match for Dorinthea, but you said we have a way to beat him. That's kind of what you alluded to earlier. So.
Consistently now.
So
I believe there's 2 ways.
What's the secret?
So again, shout out to Luke Fletcher. His deck is actually fire breathing. And he sets up a fire-breathing turn with 2 potions and Tunic. So he's playing mid-range with shunts and blocking a lot. And he literally stacks 4 blues and fire breathing, and then has his potions out and just comes in for 20. No one can block 20, including Oldhim. So in a lot of cases, it's just lethal.
Huh.
That's how he went. I think he went 7-1 in CC at Worlds or something ridiculous like that. He also went 6-1 in Nationals in Australia on Dory. But he plays a very different style of Dory. My build is thanks to Philip, and it is just like the Michael Hamilton sideboard package. It's E-Strike, Wounded Bull. Is it Wounded Bull or Wounding Blow? I always get this card. I think it's Wounded Bull. It's the one that's 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And then we run Finals Fighting Spirit, because a lot of times into Oldhim, you're at a life deficit, and it's great to heal back 1 and deal 7. Now, the reason that works, if you take away the go again, is you can block with 2 cards into Oldhim, or block with 1 card and an armor, right? And in return, go E-Strike and sink a red and hit him for 7. 7 is impossible to block efficiently in the game. It's always 1 card for 7 physical is very above rate or high rate, especially if you're not a Guardian. But then Guardians have to pay 6 for their big attacks, or 4, while we're paying just putting a card at bottom. You're also running Tunic, so you're running Shunts, 6 of them, reds and blues. Same thing, you see a Shunt, you put it in Arsenal. You're trying to out-efficient. It's just a numbers game then into Oldhim. It's an efficiency number. If you can see a Spinal, if you can see an Oakenold, Endless Winter, whatever these dumb big cards that we really can't deal with, you can now, Tunic, Shunt, block with a card from hand. Now you're blocking for 9, 10, 12 with armor, and then you hit them back for 7, not Arsenal Pass. If you're trying to do the Dawnblade turn, if you try blocking for 7 or 9 on Dawnblade, you're usually just passing, because you blocked with your whole hand, or you blocked with, remember, we need to find a go again, and we need to find a pump. It's all very hard into Oldhim. There is a third plan, which again I'd have no practice in, but this is like for people that like to play Dory. Some of these might appeal to you more. So the fire breathing blues with potions is kind of cool, right? If you know how to do it. Like, no Oldhim in the world's expecting that. The last one is playing Dawnblade Resplendent. And what you're doing then is you're setting up your Dawnblade Resplendent into twinnings, into refractions and glints. And what you do is that turn you try and hit them 4 or 5 times. And if you do manage to hit on a glistening turn more than twice, the game's over, because now your weapon is more efficient than any other attack, and you can't lose those counters on Resplendent. Mm-hmm. So if your weapon is suddenly 1 for 5, then 1 for 6, for the rest of the game, you pretty much just need to keep pitching and swinging, and you're always coming in for damage that's going to take 2 cards, and you'll literally mill them out. Dawnblade with 1 counter is more efficient than any weapon in the game, nearly. Some would say it's on par with Rosetta, but Rosetta's conditional. Dawnblade Resplendent is not. It just has the damage on it now. But then you can't play Ironsunk Pride, because that'll make you lose counters. But right. People were beating Oldhim with Resplendent. It's just, I don't like that playstyle either. Building around 1 turn. Like if you like playing combo decks, you should be playing Boltyn. Set up 1 big turn. Resplendent is not. Doesn't feel. I believe this is why I play Dory. And again, this is a card guy's quote, because they're like the warrior kings. Dory forces people to play in a lose-lose situation. It's like if I don't block, I take damage, and they get a counter. If I do block, I have no cards to play with next turn, and you're constantly creating stressful situations. That's what I like about Dory and the normal Dawnblade. The minute you switch that plan, I don't feel like I'm playing Dorinthea anymore, if that makes sense.
Got it.
But I'm happy to be flexible in the really bad matchups like Oldhim, because I really want to win. But we really shine, and we'll talk about Ironsunk Pride next. All of the cards really shine into aggressive mirrors. We really can just gobble up aggro decks, because they have their curve of damage is fairly static, and you'll get like Briar has some big peaks with Channel Mount, but Dorinthea's is like starts really low and ends up way higher than any other deck, because the Dawnblade can grow. So if you get a counter turn 1, let's say it's 1 counter, right? but then the game goes for 7 turns, and you keep that 1 counter the whole game, and you swing twice every turn, you've threatened an extra 20-something damage completely for free. You didn't have to spend cards to threaten that damage. It just came from that +1 to the weapon. Now, make it 2. I mean, in San Jose, I had a game I had 8, and a game I had 7. Come on, man. Like, 1 for 11? That's like... Anyway, they couldn't make a card that was 1 for 11. Everyone had quit the game. You know what I mean? But you can get your Dawnblade to 1 for 11. You can. That's the crazy thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I was on Resplendent I had it in my deck for Oldhim. That was my plan. It didn't work. I still lost my Oldhim match, but that was the plan.
Yeah.
Because you do have to get 2 counters on it to make it really efficient, right? And
4 and 5.
That's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot. So
and again, it's a little bit luck based. Like if you see the glistenings at the right moments, especially if they're in a row, you can really do something. But unfortunately, Oldhim on a lot of occasions will just force you to block with the glistening. Like sometimes you just can't hold on to your cards against Oldhim, or you get pummeled. Or you get Tear Sundered. Like that's what I find happens is I've got the perfect setup, and then a Tear Asunder pummel comes in, and I'm just don't have the cards anymore. They're gone in the bin, which doesn't feel great. But
yeah, the Oldhim I lost to was a Frostfang pummel deck, and it was just too much. It was just too much. So, yep,
Yeah.
You're exactly correct. All right, so Iron Song Pride. I think that's a big point of discussion, right? Obviously, you had mentioned before you weren't sure whether or not you should run 3 of them or 2 of them. My camp.
I will always run 3. There is
Okay.
an argument to run less.
Okay. Well, I was going to say my camp on it is I think you either run none or you run 3, because getting it first turn is so big, right? Or I should say getting it turn 0 is so big,
Well,
right? If you go second,
turn
that's
0
huge.
Turn 0 into some matchups is an instant win, I believe. Unless you really brick, like you draw 4 reds twice in a row or something silly, right? But turn 0, because all your armor's still up, so armor allows us... So we can break courage on a full red hand to have a turn. If we really need to keep like 3 counters, just crack courage, right? And boots allow us to either swing 3 times or fix a really good hand that has no go again. Like a no go again hand on Dory usually means you got like 3 pumps and 1 in arsenal, so you can smash the damage. But you get what I mean.
Right.
That's why turn 0 having a Dawnblade for 4 means just any go again means we're swinging for 8 that turn plus pumps. That's like it's again 4 is just. Everyone that's played Fab knows most weapons don't swing for 4. The ones that do cost 2 or 3. This is a 1 for 4. And it's not just a 1 for 4, it's a 1 for 4 where the entire deck will buff that 4 to 7, and then to 10, and then to 13, which are all breakpoint numbers that no one really deals with well. Pride, the negative is the obvious one. It doesn't block. That's the negative. Unfortunately, you can't get stuck with potions and prides. If you get 2 or 3 prides in one hand, 3 is very unlikely. 2 you'll see on occasion. It's really, really bad. Because they don't do much on their own. Like you sort of want to combo them with other things or arsenal them. But aside from that, they have no negative text. Because the text into the normal Dawnblade is just a repeat of what the Dawnblade says. So you can't see that as a negative. We already lose all our counters when we don't hit. Pride says lose your counters when you don't hit. That's perfectly fine. We don't care. The real issue is when to play it. It's a bit of a trap. You'll be very careful into Dromai because she has Quell on her gloves. If you think you're going to hit, you swing for 3. She blocks for 3. You flash it in. She can pass on damage and then quell it, and you cannot respond again. And that's that. You will just not hit, and Iron Song Pride will go in the bin at the end of the turn. So be careful against Dromai. Try and bait out the gloves, which is hard to do. Also, some Dromais will run like Ironhide gloves and stuff, so that's great if they do that. Or run Goliath Gauntlet, great. Like, be happy when you see those, because you don't want to be quelled for 1 damage. But the other trap is sometimes it's tempting to... You're going to hit twice this turn. It's tempting to throw it in. But if your arsenal's empty, do not throw it in. Put it in arsenal. That's what I've learned. Because it's face up, Andrew. You know what I mean? Like, it's face up. The minute they see it, they can now decide to get rid of it if they can block correctly. So ideally, you don't show it till you're already... The snowball is rolling down the hill. Till you've got a little bit of momentum. So turn 0, 100% beautiful. Like, dude, I did get 2 in a Blitz game. Turn 0. Like, the dash played an item, which means they're about to pass because they don't have an action point. And I just flashed 2 in, passed, drew 4. I won that game easy because it's 1 for 5. And I didn't even take damage. So the problem with turn 0 is if the dash is running Pounder and smacking you, it's going to suck to keep 3 cards in your hand. So you're going to have to take damage to get the counters, which we're not super unhappy about in CC, but Blitz, you just can't like afford to take 10. But yeah, it's great, turn 0. But everything else, just always question, if I play it now, is there a real advantage? Like, if I'm already going to hit twice, why would I flash it in now? Obviously, don't keep it in your hand if you have a floating resource. Get rid of it so you can draw up. But if your arsenal's empty, don't get greedy. If you're going to hit, just hit. If you have a counter already, I wouldn't usually play the Pride till... Like, I try and get both benefits. I try and get it to give me a counter, like to let me hit again as an attack reaction, and then also keep it around. It really helps our Dromai matchup, because Dromai, theoretically... Okay, there's 2 Dromai types of players. One is not good in Tadori. They don't know how to play the matchup. They'll summon 1 or 2 dragons at a time, and you just keep feeding your Dawnblade, and you just win. Good Dromais will fatigue you. They'll just block. They are blocking you out, playing D-reacts, and late game, bringing out way too many dragons all at once that you just physically can't deal with. That will 99% of the time beat Dory. It's a very good plan, because Dromai can actually block very well. All her stuff blocks for 3, but she also can run unmovables if she wants to. She's definitely running Sinks and Fates. Pride is really good because you can guarantee it'll hit. You just swing into a dragon. That's all you need to do. It doesn't say hero. So you just hit into a dragon, flash it in, pass. Also, 4 is the breakpoint for dragons. Like, the ones you really need to get rid of, Dominia and Under, are all 4 health or less. With the exception of Yenderai. But I think Pride is really good into Dromai because of that. You can do the reverse plan, is you pitch away your Ironsong Prides till later, till they summon dragons, and then you know what I mean? And then you just immediately get a Dawnblade for 5 or 6, because you can flash a couple in 1 turn and just have them. One thing about Dromai, count your coppers off Spoils of War, especially versus Dromai, because a lot of Dorinthea players don't count the coppers. 2 reasons to count the coppers. One is, if you draw a 3 blue hand, you can pitch 2 of the blues, floating 2 off the copper to draw a card and have a better turn than you would have off 3 blues. And second, Kyloria steals items. A copper is an item. So if you did a Spoils of War turn into Dromai, smack the dragons with it to generate 4 coppers, and that's 4 Chromai hits that actually do nothing except 4 damage. And they just steal 1 copper. It's kind of funny. I didn't realize that till Nationals this year, but we're sort of immune to Kyloria. What's funny is, the Crown of Dominion is a problem, because Dromai can just Kyloria you, and she will steal that gold token if you don't block her. It's not great for you if you're playing cash-in yourself. So it actually forces a block if you're royal with the gold token.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Dromai match, I won one, like you said, though. One guy, he was pooping dragons, and then the other guy pitch stacked his Rake the Embers, and I lost that one. So
yeah.
Yep. All right, great.
It's tricky late game to decide whether to clear out little Ashwings or not. Like, when the Dromai's on 9, you really want to just hit them. But if they keep a Sigil in hand and they got 6 Ashwings, Oh man,
Yeah.
like the game's over so quick. We have no way of popping them. I haven't worked this out yet, but I think if you're running my list with all the 6 attacks into Oldhim, you got 6 poppers. So I think there's some logic in putting some of those in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
Because you do have them in the sideboard. I think into Dromai there's some... And I think, look, really good players actually pitch stack. They don't count their pitch necessarily. What they're doing is pitching into what you're pitching. So they try and remember, and if they see a Tumultai, they then pitch a popper. That's how very good players play. High-level players. It's a skill most of us don't use. I've used it on occasion, but I always forget to like actually pay attention to someone's pitch. But you should always pitch a popper. Like when you see them put a Kailoria in the pitch zone, you should be very aware of that, and you should, if you have a popper in hand, next turn, pitch it. Because then you're more likely going to draw your popper when you need it. I think a lot of high-level games actually won like that. Even commentators will not always notice that this is happening. But I can tell you now, I know for a fact Michael Hamilton plays like that. Matt Rogers, Nick Butcher, Hayden Dale, they all know what you pitched, and they specifically will put an unmovable into their pitch zone that turn because they know that you put a spinal into yours.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're doing. Because it's like countering, and it's very important. We usually play face up, and we play what's on the combat chain, and we go, what do I decide into the combat chain? While high level players are also playing into what did you pitch for later. That's more important. Because you don't lose the game at the start, if you know what I mean. You lose it at the end. So it's very important. You have answers for what they pitched. Especially in the Dromai match, you should try and be aware. So again, if you see they pitched a Chromai and a Kailoria together, or a Chromai Azalea together, you should try and pitch one of your Go Again cards at that time. So that when they summon them, you have Go Again to kill them. Because I die a lot because I... into Dromai, they'll be on 4 life, I'm on 20, but then they'll summon 4 dragons, and I don't have any Go Again left in the deck. Which is bad, because I got to clear the Chromai, right? So I swing it to the Chromai and pass. Yes, my Dawnblade's 1 for 6, but it's only eating 1 dragon a turn, and that's not good enough.
Yeah, that's a good point, because that is why I lost that rake match, is all my poppers I'd blown early. So that's really well taken, actually, in that. So, but we digressed. We got off topic. It was a good topic, but we got off topic. So let's hit on puncture then, right?
Yes.
We talked a bit about that. It's a tough one because you're kind of forecasting a little bit, right? So specifically, we have I've names escaping me right now, but it's the blue you talked about, right? So it's a 1 blue gives goes, and then
Precision press.
Yeah, precision press. Yes. So that one's a little tough because you're forecasting, right? They just know not to block. Otherwise, I think it's a good card. I think the blue on that makes its way into a lot of decks. So what's your take on puncture overall? It's really cool in concept. I'm just curious what your experience is of is it working as well as we thought?
I disagree with Phil. He's running 2. I want to run 3. Where he's correct is armor gets used like it's permanent, right? Reprise is a mechanic that you'll see all game because people can block till the game's over. But armor is not there till the game's over into a lot of decks. The only decks really that do are, Kassai. Now we have Arachne and Oldhim. They're the only decks right now that will probably have armor up when you kill them. Like they'll have some piece of armor they can block with. There is a mechanic that forces people to block with armor, but a warrior doesn't have that yet. Mm-hmm. If we get a harpoon-like card that forces armor block, then we will also be running Shatter because you'll want to destroy their armor. Like Shatter is completely useless for the same reason: is when they block with armor, we want to hit them, not destroy. Like
right, yeah, exactly.
But also, there's only like one instance for some pieces of armor. There's only one time the whole game. And you got to get pretty lucky to have your 1 anti-armor card. But like I said, Puncture's still a 1 for 3. Let me put it this way. Stroke and Out for Blood, I think more than 50% of the time, you just use them as a 1 for 3. You don't get the second text because you're just pumping it on the second swing. Again, because blocked with armor or whatever. Now it's just this is so Out for Blood pretty much says it's 1 for 4 if they block with a card from hand, but the +1 is for the next attack. It's great. Stroke is much more powerful because we're fixing hands and we're using Sharp Eye if you use it, but it just allows you to fix a hand quite efficiently, or stack your deck. You can draw a really good card. Like if you pitch 2 blues and you stroke and you see a red, you put the red with the blues on the bottom of your deck so you have a better turn later. That kind of thing. Puncture's just as good. It says it's 1 for 4 if they block with armor, which is great because what's usually happening is good players will block you 3 from hand and then they will block 4 armor, let's say, or 3 armor, right? Think of a warrior mirror, or a brute mirror, a brute match. Like they have armor box for 1, armor box for 2. They'll throw 3+3 at you because then your Out for Blood does nothing, your stroke does nothing, but now puncture will make it hit for 1. And it's situational, yes, but again, it's a 1 cost +3, which is the main thing, and it blocks for 3, so definitely you don't run Razor and Thrust anymore. You just put that in. How many? You can go watch my video with Phil. We talked about that for 20 minutes. I can't work out if it's 2 or 3 and which ones are 2 or 3. That decision today would be your local meta. What are you playing into? Everyone's on Arachne, 3 punctures. I would nearly say play Precision Press because Arachne can technically block with their boots all game. Keep bringing it back. Block with it, give the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're in Blitz and everyone plays Kassai, 100% you'd be running Puncture. So that's a local meta thing. Going into like Pro Tour, that's a tricky one. But if you go into Pro Tour, you should be able to make those decisions to your playstyle, I think, and try and judge what you're going to match up into.
Sure. Yeah, that makes. I mean, I think I'm obviously that was my spoiler card, so I'm predispositioned on that one. But I think Puncture's really good. I think there are cases to make. The question is, what do you take out for it? But I think it needs to go in the deck, right?
The issue is that we took out cards for Ironsong Pride, which is, I think, is the priority. But we still have room. And there's an argument to take out Routes and put in Puncture, because Route is a situational 2 cost.
Probably makes sense, actually.
Yeah. Because Route is terrible into into Guardians, because they usually run the removal for like the D-react from Arsenal. But the second they give you Rampart, they've done the maths wrong. They've done Rampart as a 1 block, but it's actually a 0 block on the stack into Puncture. So I'm more likely to cut a Route and put a Puncture in. But I think we settled on 2. And the counter argument to that, and this is the debate I love, is because Ironsong Pride's in the deck, I think you need less 1 cost for 3 and more big pumps, because now we get a counter at some point anyway without having to hit. So why not just have the big beefy, like, have you ever double red overpowered someone? Like, I killed a Starvo like that in Jersey.
No, I only run blue.
Right, I had a red overpower in Arsenal, and I drew 3 blues and a red overpower. So I pitched, swung, and then I +12'd it. That's nuts. But when Pride is out, a +12 will not only deal a whole bunch of damage, but also make the Pride stay around, which is then what we're doing. We're playing defend the counter or defend the queen. So the argument means I need to play another. I'll play all ProQuest season, and then we'll loop back, and I'll tell you how it felt. But I think I'm going to add. I'm on 23 blues. I think I'm going to go to 24, 25, and I'm going to put 3 red overpowers, 3 routes, and 3 biting blades. That's what I'm thinking of doing, and actually removing Out for Blood and removing Puncture, because I don't really care if you block with armor if I'm overpowering you for 6. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a +4 anyway, and the cost is irrelevant, because what are we doing? We're more likely playing an Ironsong Pride for free, meaning swing Naked Dawnblade. They don't block, because it's the correct decision into a Dawnblade for 3 is to not block it, because you don't want to give Glint, right? And you're expecting a run through or a glint here, so you just say no blocks. I flash it in, and now I've got Pride. The next hand I want to see, I'd love it to have Route or Overpower in it, because I can nearly guarantee that counter now stays, because it goes from 4 to 10. And very unlikely, by the way, if they block us for 12, we sort of win tempo anyway, so you trade the counter for tempo. But if they don't, you just smack them in the face for 10. And we're happy with that. That's not a loss.
Yeah, so that's interesting actually on the Naked Dawnblade with the mid-game pride on a Naked Dawnblade. That actually makes sense. And that's in theory then just a 2-card hand, right?
Yes, so you can... Look, the problem with the 2-card hand is you're projecting no pump. Right?
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
But yes, technically, if you have it in Arsenal, you pitch a blue swing Dawnblade, they're going to assume Arsenal is a glint or a run-through, right? Or because... So what they'll do there is either they'll block with 2 cards, which is great for you because you traded 2 cards for 2 cards, right? Because you're playing with 2, now they're playing with 2, so you kind of... They called your bluff incorrectly. They overblocked. They threw an extra card at you because you don't have a 3 pump. You don't have 2 pumps. You only have 1. So if anyone blocks for 6 when you only have 1 card floating, they've blocked incorrectly in a way. To me, when I'm playing Interdori, anytime you swing Naked Dawnblade, I'm either, if I'm trying to be tricky, will block it for 3 with armor exactly, or I will pass and not block, because it's never correct to block a Naked Dawnblade with 1 card. You will lose the game when you do that, because they will glint, draw an Iron Song response, hit you for 6 anyway, and then have go again. It's bad. It's bad to do. There's no correct decision to ever block with 1 card into a Naked Dawnblade, I don't believe. Of course, when there's no resources, no cards floating, that is the perfect decision, because you stop a counter or you stop a second swing. But other than that, if they got any cards in hand, you always pass.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. All right. Well, we are closing in on an hour, but we could probably talk about this for 3 days. I can talk about
we both
all
play
day
it.
long. Yep, exactly.
It's passion.
Yep, that's right. So why don't we go ahead and start wrapping it up? Can you let people know where they can find you? You kind of already pumped it on the front end, but where can people find you, and how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so it's Fluke and Box, which is like a play on Flesh and Blood, if people were wondering. It on YouTube, on Twitter, and Facebook. And Thunder, Flesh and Blood Down Under is our podcast, me and the Tall Timmy. You'll probably put links below, but honestly, we probably share a lot of viewers. It's a small community. I've been a fan of yours, actually, ever since I started the game. I went on a hunt to get all the Fab channels and subscribe to them. And then when I started my channel, same. We share a mutual friend in Kirk Bushell, Mr. FabDB himself.
That's right.
Lucky I get to hang out with him on occasion, but he always speaks very highly of you. So, but yeah, anyone want to support me? That's just find my content, give me feedback. That's about it.
And if you have not seen this guy's stuff, or the Tall Timmy, or their collab stuff, check them all out. But I'm pretty sure, like you said, we share a large audience. So fair enough. All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you coordinating with me. I know it's Saturday afternoon for you when we're shooting this, so I appreciate taking time out of your day, waiting for my kiddo to go to bed. And it was really great to get to meet you in person and talk here as well. And we'll have to have you on again, like you said, after ProQuest season. You can come give us the rundown, and we can share our go lick our wounds together. I think maybe that's the plan.
No, we're winning. What do you mean?
We will see. We will see. All right. Well, again, I want to thank you a lot. If you guys have had comments, hopefully you've been logging them as we go, but please log them below, and we'll both try to go hit those and respond to what we can. But, man, I really appreciate it, and say it with me. Go Commando.
Go Commander.
Always go Commando. Yeah.